Okay, so last week we talked about two events that started the American Revolution leading up to the Revolutionary War. Who can tell me the two events that we talked about? We read passages on them, we did some activities on them. Who can tell me if they remember the two events, that we talked about last week? I want to give you some time to talk to your partner really quick and tell them the two events that we talked about last week. What events did we talk about? French and Indian War and 1763.
53.
Oh, the video was 1764. Okay, good. Who can share with us? Two events that we talked about last week. Pedro. Okay, we have the French and Indian War, second event. So that was the first event. And what happened in the French and Indian War? Why were we fighting? Why was there a war at all? They were after the land. They were also. That was our second event. Who were fighting in the war?
The Indians.
The British and French and Indians, because they were allies with the French, and they were fighting over what, Damien? What were they fighting over? Land. They were fighting over land, right?
Who won?
Who won?
Indians.
The British won because George Washington was on the British side of those groups of people, and George Washington was the one who helped them win the war. He came in and they ended up winning. So because of that, what happened? They were fighting over land and they were moving east, or they were moving west to get more land. Did the Indians like that?
No.
No, they did not. So what did they do? They made a document called the Proclamation of 1764, which said what?
63.
They made a boundary or a boundary line which divided, Andrew.
Was the Constitution made back then? The Constitution?
That happened, later. Andrew?
Which meant that the colonists had to move out of the west and move somewhere near, I think, the northwest.
So they wanted to move west, right? And that boundary line was made because the Indians were upset that the colonists were moving west. Did the colonists listen?
Nope.
Did the colonists listen?
No.
No, they didn't. Were the Indians happy?
No,
No, they were not.
Horseshoe.
Let's talk about this a little bit later. I love hearing your ideas though. So today we're going to be talking about an event called the Stamp Act. Thinking in your head, what do you think this is going to be about? It's going to, remember how we talked about taxation without representation? Who remembers that? Thumbs up if you remember. Thumbs up if you remember. Thumbs down if you don't remember. Okay, well, we're going to talk about it more today, so that will help us understand more about taxation. But the Stamp Act, because there was a war, what happens when we have a war? Do we make money or lose money? They lost a lot of money. So the Stamp Act is going to teach us what they did to make more money.
They traded.
Okay? So keep that in your mind as we watch this video so we can learn more about the Stamp Act. So they're going to have an idea that will help them make more money. Because of the war, we lost a lot of money. So this is going to be their idea to make money. And think about how the Indians are reacting to this and how the colonists are reacting to this. And make sure you use your avid notes on your paper. Writing key terms that you hear. And their facts or definitions on the side. Okay? Ready? Aiden, can you get the lights started?
I should put that all in there.
One of the most well-known taxes levied against England's North American colonies was the Stamp Act. Used to raise funds needed to pay the enormous debt incurred during the French and Indian War and to fund garrisons of British troops remaining in the colonies in Canada, the Act required the paper parchment for all legal documents, newspapers, journals, in fact almost every form of paper used in the colonies, to be imported from London where an existing tax was already in place. The Act was met with almost immediate opposition, not so much because of the tax, but because it had been levied without colonial representation in Parliament. Taxation without representation, the rallying cry for the coming revolution, had been born. The Act was repealed the very next year, but only in the colonies. The tax on paper and documents remained in force in Great Britain for quite some time. On this 1779 copy of the London Gazette, the stamp can be seen on the same page as a legal notice regarding an update to stamp duties 13 years after the Act's repeal in the colonies. There were several different designs of stamps used, such as this 1746 issue of the London Gazette. A second example, marked specifically for the American colonies, can be seen in this proof sheet from May of 1765. This third example, from both the June 1779 issue of the London Gazette and again in the London Chronicles from 1789, was often stamped in shades of vermilion. Notice that the entire stamp often isn't visible. The tax was required to be paid on the larger parent sheet. Once it had been paid, printers were permitted to trim the sheets to a more manageable size, so long as the stamp was visible somewhere on the final product. If the stamp was accidentally cut off, sheets of the stamps were available to be glued onto legal documents, much like a wax seal might be added. Reproductions of the rubber stamps used for the Stamp Act can be purchased by going to the 18th century section of repropaperwork.com and adding either the early or late Stamp Act stamp to your card. Cheers!
Good. Okay, I want to watch one more video. So hold on 1 second as I look it up.
Why?
The button.
Sugar, boom, boom.
History music video.
See if this is-
I believe the sugar. Sugar act.
The Sugar Act by Lisa and Jasmine Pritchett.
The sugar
Okay, well, maybe if I find another one later, we'll
The sugar.
Okay, so we're gonna read a passage on the Sugar Act. What act did we just see in that video? The
Taxation.
taxation without representation, but they taxed what? Stamps, so paper goods. So if you wanted to purchase anything like a newspaper, then they would tax that item, and you would have to pay extra for those things. So that's how the people got more money, because you had to pay more. You had to be taxed for those goods. Do you think people liked that?
No.
No, they didn't. So on your paper, what are some terms did you write down on your paper?
Taxation without representation.
Okay, taxation without representation could be on your notes. What else, Andrew?
I was gonna ask a question.
Okay.
The more you buy like stamps or paper goods, the tax increase.
I'm not sure if it increased or if it stayed the same. I would think that it would.
I don't think so. I think
What do you think?
I also, because I don't think they were smart enough to think about it.
It was probably new to them. This tax was probably new to them.
That's what it probably did.
So what is your opinion?
I don't know, I think they did do it until like later, when they learned more.
Do you think it increased
Like later, like when.
as time went by? Do you think it increased? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure, but that's a good idea. So we just talked about the Stamp Act. So if you have your notes, you could write Stamp Act on your notes because we're going to talk about that. And then this passage that we're going to read is on the Sugar Act. So we're going to learn more about how they tried to get more money with sugar. Okay? Can I have my helpers pass these out? Nancy and ourselves. So if you have a highlighter or pencil, question? Yeah, keep your notes up so we can add more key terms and vocabulary as we read. Damien? Kevin, what's that?
This one, 1764. Yes,
The Stamp Act was in
54.
So this is the Sugar Act. Hey, let's see who's ready. Ready? We're gonna do popcorn reading today because I want to hear you guys read this passage
Are we gonna
rather
share
than
weekends?
me reading it. So let's see who can start us off.
Are we gonna share weekends?
Are we gonna share a weekend?
Well, I just
No,
said that.
this is not the time. Andrew, can you start us off, please? You're following along with your highlighter or pencil. Thank you. Ready? Go.
In 1764, the British Parliament passed the Sugar Act. This was a British law meant to raise money for the African colonies. When American colonies. When this law began, England started to tax the colonists 3
Pence.
per pound of sugar. 3 pence was not much money at all. However, this new tax greatly angered colonists.
Awesome. Stop there for me. So, what are some things I can highlight in the first paragraph of this passage? Raise your hand and I'll call on you. Shh. Anna. British Parliament, okay, who was the British Parliament? Who was in the British Parliament, do you think?
Native Americans?
British Parliament were the colonists that came over from England. The British Parliament was the King George.
Oh yeah, there's a king that wants
So if you want to write on your paper King George, the third to remember. Pass the Sugar Act. Okay, anything else that you highlight? see some people that highlighted.
I highlighted.
What?
Highlighted.
Araceli, what did you highlight? You're listening to her? Yeah. So the Sugar Act, it was meant to raise money. Okay? Let's see who else. Janine, can you come up here and highlight on my paper what you think is important?
You don't have to.
So we have British Parliament passed the act. It was called the Sugar Act. It was meant to raise money because we had lost so much money. What else? Yeah, please highlight something else. It angered the colonists. Do you agree with her? Do you think it angered the colonists?
Yes. No.
Yeah. Would you like to pay taxes?
Yes.
We still.
So they were upset. They were greatly angered. The colonists were greatly angered.
My dad did it.
Andrew.
So, they were making a profit out of the sugar they were buying?
Yes. Exactly.
Isn't taxes
Anna.
the date?
Yeah, we can highlight the date. Gives us more information about when this happened. How much? How much was the tax? Aiden, how much was the tax that they were charging? It says it in the first paragraph.
What?
How much was the tax?
3 times. 3 times.
3 pence per pound of sugar. Was that a lot?
No.
Low.
Was it?
Before it was.
What is it?
When this law began, England started to tax the colonists 3 pence per pound of sugar. 3 pence was not much at all. However, it greatly angered the colonists.
It's not me.
Okay, let's see who else can read for us. Karen, do you mind reading at the start of the next? Yes, go ahead.
The Sugar Act was the first direct tax that Parliament
Parliament.
after the French and Indian War. Many
Let's see.
England
The Sugar Act was the first direct tax that Parliament imposed on.
the American colonies. England's debt had grown considerably
Good.
after the French and Indian War. Many in England argued that it was only fair that the colonists helped pay for the French and Indian War because it was fought to protect
Colonial borders. Okay, good. Stop there for me. Take a minute and highlight some things in that part of the paragraph that you think is important. And then I'm going to call on some people to come and highlight on my paper. So make sure you have something. Good, I like seeing. Some people are highlighting and some people are not. Gonna call on you, so make sure you have something.
Show how to do the first night.
anything in that section on my paper up here? The Sugar Act was the first direct tax that Parliament imposed on the American colonies. Do you think that's important?
Yes.
Yeah, because it was the first one.
I wrote
Okay, thank you.
that.
Someone else. Pablo.
That's what I wrote.
Good.
You're joking. No. You have no highlighter. Well, you forgot because it was.
It's his choice. He doesn't have to if he doesn't. Thank you. Okay. Your turn. Take it up. What about the sentence before it? Do you think that's important? Let's read it together. England's debt had grown considerably after the French and Indian War. Do you think that's important? What is debt? If I have debt, you're thinking of something different. But I like that you're thinking hard. What's debt? If I have debt to somebody or something or someone,
Oh, you owe them.
I owe them money, right? Is that what you're gonna say?
That's why you get a credit card. That's why they say.
But if you don't pay your credit card bill at a certain time, then interest is raising. So we're getting off topic.
That's what they have.
So after the French and Indian War, we had talked about how they had lost a lot of money. They were in debt, right? So they had to find an idea that would help them make money. Yes. Okay. Let's see who else can read the rest of it, rest of the passage. Damien.
While colonists were not particularly happy about paying the extra 3 pence per pound tax, they were more upset about the larger issue. There was no representation for the colonies in the British Parliament. The colonists argued that the Parliament passed laws to tax them without giving them a voice or vote in Parliament. No taxation without representation was a phrase moved throughout the colonies.
Awesome. Okay, take a minute and highlight something in that last section, and I'm going to call on people to come up and highlight on my paper. Okay, good. Andrew, can you come up and highlight something on mine?
Yeah, this one. When did he start? When did he stop at?
He finished the whole thing. He read the whole thing.
Can I do it again?
Nope.
That's
Thank
very
you. You have one? Okay, let's see what he's gonna highlight in the last section of our passage.
This is fun and the activity. After this, it is what?
Okay, so no taxation without representation was a new phrase heard. What does that mean? Taxation without representation. What do you think that means, Melanie?
There's like taxes that they're giving, and they have no one to represent them.
Yeah, so you know how we have representatives from our state, California, that represent, who speak for us when they go to like state meetings and
To the president.
yeah, exactly. So they didn't have anybody who represented them, who was their person who could go to the
There was one of them.
right. So they didn't have anyone. They didn't feel like there was someone from British Parliament who represented their people. They felt like they were by themselves in a sense. So they were taxing. They were taxing the people to get more money, but that angered the colonists, right? They didn't like that. So the larger issue was, can we stop with the laughing and the talking and all of that? It's really disrespectful and rude. I'm trying to teach a lesson, and you're laughing, and it's not very nice. It takes a lot for someone to come up here and talk. Would you like to come up here and talk and teach all of these people? Okay, I don't want you laughing at me or laughing or whatever you're doing. But that's how it makes me feel.
Sitting back here, and I'm just shaking my head. I can tally mark every disruption. I'm just sitting here, and I'm hoping that we can cut this out later, but I am just in downright shock. And then you look back here to see if I'm looking at you. And I keep looking at Miss Ferrier because I'm like, oh my gosh, how disruptive can this class be? She's teaching an awesome lesson, giving you lots of learning, social studies and language arts at the same time. She's doing an awesome job with what? With disrespectful children who are acting like kindergartners. I'm in shock. Don't get me wrong, there are some of you who are doing absolutely amazing. And there are about 8 of you, and you know who you are because you sit there and you look at me. And others who, like, you're coloring all over your paper. I mean, we talked about this earlier upstairs, your effort. I hear the giggling. I can't say anything because she's recording. But I'm seriously, I am going to tally mark every disruption from certain people. Because it's non-stop and completely rude. It takes a lot for her, and you guys had agreed to be Miss Ferrier students as she's teaching. But I can't even believe the disrespect. Same people. And you're calling each other, Damien, Damien, Aiden, Aiden. During her lesson. And you don't want me to give you X's for being disrespectful? I don't care if you're not laughing at her. You shouldn't be laughing.
Can you spit out whatever's in your mouth?
please feel free, Miss Ferrier, to clip them down, or please feel free to give them GER tickets, because it is ridiculous.
Yeah. I couldn't.
I
continue.
know, I was getting to the point, I was looking at you and I'm like, oh my God. If you don't wanna learn and you don't wanna listen, put your heads down. And don't. That's your choice all the time. It's your choice. But you don't have the choice to be disrespectful in this classroom. It's amazing. I was gonna sit over on the side over there so that I could do some work and grade. And I couldn't even. Your choice. Let me know now so I can have you go to a different classroom. You've totally ruined her lesson, and she was doing such an awesome job. Same people, Damien and Aiden talking. People singing up in the front row.
It's not funny.
It's not. Damien, leave. Go to Mrs. Wiltie's class. You guys think it's so cool to be disrespectful.
It really hurts my feelings because I'm trying to learn.
And she's trying to teach. Who else? Make a choice. So embarrassing. If I call your name, you are done for the day. Make a choice. Who would like to sit and learn? All right, these are your learners.
Okay, so we're going to finish reading the passage. We still have some sentences. Is there anything else that you thought that we could highlight in this passage that you thought was important? Anna, can you come up and highlight on my paper? Do you have a highlight? So the colonists argue that Parliament passed laws to tax them without giving them a voice or vote in Parliament. So they didn't even have a chance to vote if this is something that they really wanted. They didn't have a chance to decide if this would work for them as colonists in this new land. So they didn't have any representation to discuss or talk about or vote as a group of people. It was like if we voted for a class president or someone in our class to represent our class and voice something that we wanted for our school, if we wanted pizza every Friday or something like that, we would choose someone to represent our class to go to the other 5th grade classes, their other 4th grade classes, and tell them, this is something that we want, this is something that we need. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if you're understanding. So we would have a representative and we would vote Damien as our representative, and he would go to a different class and say, Miss Borja's class, we really want this and we think that this school needs this. Right? So we would vote in our class. Okay? Question? You have something to highlight? Come up and do it. Awesome. So there is no representation for the colonists in the British Parliament. Add any key terms you think that we should add to our AVID notes? So we talked about the Sugar Act.
No
We
taxation without law.
We talked about the Stamp Act. We talked about no taxation without representation. We talked about the British Parliament. Those are some key terms. If you don't already have them on your paper, you can add them. And give you a minute to do that.
What are some key terms?
Who can tell him some key terms that we just talked about? Melanie.
The Stamp Act and
The
the Sugar Act.
Stamp Act and the Sugar Act. Karen.
The part.
British Parliament. Good. Andrew.
Taxation with no rate.
Do it. You got it. Confidence. No taxation. You say it.
No taxation without representation.
Awesome. You got it. Good. Finish up and write those key terms. Keep your notebooks out so we can always refer back to it. And then we're gonna do a little activity.
We're gonna have one.
Oh, on the notes? I want us to do this first really quick, and then we can annotate later if we have time. Because I also want to give you time to finish your posters too. Okay. So up here we have, it's called a Sugar Act foldable, and it looks like a flower.
We're gonna fold it.
First, I want you to answer the questions inside using our passage that we just read. Okay? This is our evidence. This tells us the answers. So we refer back to our text evidence as help to answer questions from our text discussing the Sugar Act. So, how much of a tax was placed on sugar in 1764? How much was the tax?
3
3 pence, right? So we would put 3 pence. Okay. I think it's like a cent. Yeah, I think it's like, it sounds like, to me when I think of pence, I think of cents.
Like they call their money pounds.
So I think of pennies.
No, they call it money pounds, so I think that's what it is.
Yeah, but it also said that it wasn't that much per pound. 3 pence per pound.
So maybe.
So in this one it says draw a picture to help you remember the Sugar Act. So draw a picture here.
We draw like a part of the tree.
I will let you decide. Whatever helps you remember is what I want you to draw. What group passed the Sugar Act? And we can look at our text to help us answer that question. Why was the Sugar Act created? Why was the Sugar Act created?
To get more money.
To get more money because,
Because it was taxing colonists.
yes, they were, but why? They wanted more money from what?
From the colonists.
From the colonists, but why were they in debt?
King George.
Because of a particular
The French and
war that happened, right? The French and Indian War. So the Sugar Act was created to make more money. Why did England feel justified in taxing the colonists? You'll refer back to your text for that one, and so on. Questions on this? Don't cut it out yet. I just want you to answer the questions. Make sure you have your 5th grade heading at the top. Okay? I need my paper passer outers again.
Can we put our name behind the flower?
Yeah, you can put it behind the flower. That'd be great. Because we will cut it out eventually later on. Question? No, just at your desk. It's great.
Like the partner
No, right here. It's fine. No, nope. Sit right there. I don't want the people moving them all around. So let's look at that. How much of a tax was placed on sugar in 1764? All in here. So if you want help for to answer your questions, look at the text. Okay.